How do we help form faith for the long haul in a young person's life? What are the things we're putting in to help them learn how to follow Jesus? In our area in Northern Ireland, it was a loyalist area, all Protestants, and there was Catholics, and there was tension. And that night, they initiated me by petrol bombing a prison officer's car. I just had to sit in the front seat. But I remember, this is not right, but also this is not God, because I had had these encounters of Jesus and he was good, and this was not good. Take the opportunity at the moment, because it seems that God has a bias for young people, and I love that. Youth ministry doesn't have to be sexy and really creative. It can be very simple. Young people aren't looking for glitzy and flashy. They're looking for authentic relationships. When there's that intergenerational passing on of faith, it is a beautiful thing, and it captures young people's hearts.
A very warm welcome to the Lausanne Movement podcast for those who have a passion to accelerate global mission together. I'm your host, Jason Watson, and today we are having an important conversation about the next generation. My guest is Jasper Rutherford, a youth ministry leader, evangelist, and researcher who has spent more than 20 years working with young people across Europe. In this episode, we talk about Jasper's remarkable journey to faith, the openness we're seeing among Gen Z, and what it looks like for churches to truly welcome and disciple young people today. I think you're going to be encouraged, challenged, and filled with hope. So I want to invite you to go ahead and grab your headphones and let's dive into today's episode with Jasper Rutherford. Well, Jasper, welcome to the podcast. It's good to have you with us.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invite.
I'm really excited. We're going to be talking about young people. We're going to be talking about what God is doing across Europe and youth ministry particularly. But Jasper, before we dive into that, I would love for you to take us back. How did God particularly grab your heart for young people? And how has that journey led you to the point that you're at today? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a long story, so I'll keep it brief. I actually didn't become a Christian till I was 23, and but God had shown up in my life in pretty miraculous ways through my childhood and through my teenage years. But I ran away from him. But I had encounters of Jesus that I couldn't deny him being real. So whenever I was 13, I thought I'll become a Christian when I'm 14, when I'm 14, 15. I just kept putting it off. And then it wasn't until I was 23 where I finally gave my life to Jesus in a very simple way, getting on my knees. I knew I needed him, and I said I was all in and I would do anything for him. In between that, I had finished my undergraduate degree. I was studying in Liverpool, but then I went to study a PhD in Birmingham. So I became a Christian in the summer, and then I was moving to Birmingham, and I needed to find a church. Somebody told me about this church in Birmingham. And so I thought, I'm a Christian now. I need to help. That's what Christians do in the church. So um, I coached football and soccer, and I knew I could have a laugh with young people. So I sort of stumbled into youth ministry, to be honest. It was just, yeah, I need to do something. I'll help. I'll help with the young people. I thought I could do that because I could have a laugh with them, and it would be an adult that needs to just show up. And that was my thought at university. I can show up and help out. But I quickly fell in love and realized that I wasn't there for my PhD. I was there for volunteering as a youth leader. And over those years of studying in Birmingham, I got involved in the youth ministry in the local church as a volunteer. But I recognized quite quickly that this is where God wanted me. And that started the journey of me. I finished my PhD, I was getting married, but when I moved back to Belfast, then I started to apply for youth pastor roles, youth worker roles. And I had a PhD, I was a doctor, but I had no qualifications in youth ministry, so I couldn't get interviews. But I knew that's what that God was leading me into.
Yeah, I love hearing the backstory to the people that we're interviewing. We often have these varying stories. For some people, it's instantaneous, God ordained, lightning from heaven type of experiences, and for others like yourself, it's God gently guiding us by His grace into our calling up into the present moment. All right, so take us back. You had your PhD in physiology. You went back to Belfast. You were applying for ministry roles. You weren't qualified for these roles. You are now with a group for Christ in Youth. I would love to know how that came about and tell us more about your organization that you work for.
Yeah, well, so going back to that time in Belfast, I was applying for these jobs, not getting anywhere, and I was getting married to my wife Lynn, and I was 27. I'd been a student for a long time. I needed to earn some money. We were getting married, but my name had been given to this church in inner East Belfast, and I was going to meet the minister for an interview or a talk or a chat about this potential job. But in between that, I was working in the University of Ulster doing some research, and it was a short-term project while I was writing up my PhD. And I had also then thought, I'm not getting any youth work invitations or opportunities. I actually had been headhunted for a job as a physiologist, which would have been, before I was a Christian, my ideal type job. It was a new business, a dietitian myself, starting this business. It would have earned me not lots of money, but a lot more money than youth ministry. And I had ended up going through all these interviews and being offered this really exciting new job. But in the meantime, I had this interview with this church in Belfast. My fiance at the time, my wife Lynn, we went to this meeting, and I had written down what I would love to do in terms of inner city drugs and alcohol, fatherless stuff, things that had been around my life, even gangs and paramilitaries and in inner city Belfast. That's the kind of stuff I knew God wanted me to work with, those types of young people. And I had written some things down, and the minister had written some things down, and it was as if we had written the same thing in terms of the vision. But um, they didn't have this church didn't have any money. This is what their aspirations were, but they didn't know when it was going to start. I was getting married. I needed money. Uh, but me and my wife Lynn left that meeting in the church house with the minister. He's a very close friend now. And as we walked out the door, it was my wife Lynn said, we need to take this job. This is where God wants us. Even though we didn't know when it was going to start, and even though we had this other offer, it just became very clear this is what God had for us. And I remember getting the phone call the next day from the big important job, and them saying to me, and I said, look, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to decline the offer. Thank you. And they said, look, out of interest, could you let us know what company you're going with or what you're doing? And I remember telling them, well, they thought I was going to do some other, important doctorate physiology stuff. And I said, well, actually, I'm going to be a youth worker in inner East Belfast. And I remember the girl on the phone goes, are you absolutely crazy? She used more expletive language than that. And she was really cross with me. She goes, are you crazy? And no, I'm not. It's actually the easiest decision that I've had to make. And God works way up in advance of us. And I just felt this is what God had prepared in advance for me to do. And so it was an easy yes. So I did that, local youth pastor in a inner city church in Belfast. We've seen incredible growth, incredible dozens and dozens, hundreds of young people coming to Jesus in that church, and transformation, because it was inner city, working class, amazing things happening with young people over a course of years, and in schools work, and the whole church had seen a real move of God over the years, and it's sort of recognized as an incredible, just God was in that area doing amazing things and still is. But I did that for 7 years, and then I've always been an evangelist since I became a Christian. So it was very clear, if God can do it in me, He can do it in you. He can do it in anybody. And so I again, my wife spotted it, and just there's an old organization called Church Army, which is an Anglican order of evangelists, and I went and trained with them for a couple of years to be a Church Army evangelist. Um, in England for a couple of years, we moved as a family, got trained there, and then I came back to help with an organization here called Summer Madness, which is a big youth event that I would have spoke at and held and hosted and helped out with. But then I had a conversation with this other organization called Christ in Youth, who were in Ireland exploring if they could launch into Europe. And then people told them to meet me. We had a conversation. I thought it was Americans coming over to tell us what to do. I was polite and had a coffee with them, but actually we really hit it off, and I thought, okay, we could work together here. So I would go over there and speak at their events. They came to our events here in Ireland, and we learned off each other for years. And then I helped them think through if they were going to come into Europe, what that might look like. And they offered me, would I head it up in Europe? And I said, if we started in the Republic of Ireland, where the need is greater, then yes, I would head this up. And so really, Christ in Youth, our vision is to call young people to Christ. And we have this little strap line. We want to activate their faith to be kingdom workers is the language we use. So young people can be active in their faith now. We don't have to wait till you're growing up and have it all figured out. God has plans for young people now to be active in their faith, whether that's in their sports teams, their schools, their churches, or with their families, so we call them to Christ, we lead them into kingdom work, and we do it all through the local church. So we're the bridesmaids, never the bride, is our little strap line, because we love the church, all the church, all nuances of the church. We try to set up the church to win with their young people. So we get alongside the church and we run events and resource youth ministers and run retreats and send young people on mission trips, but all through the local church to try to help the church really disciple young people well.
Wow. Okay. You did
That was a big sentence. That was a big sentence.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to really just get an idea of where you're coming from, what your ministry is, what your background has been. I would love to dive a little bit deeper into your story, if you don't mind, because you mentioned as part of your testimony that you had written down these lists of ideals that your ideal youth pastor job would deal with, inner city kind of work, people from fatherless homes, drugs, etc., and gangs. And you mentioned that's part of your story. And so I would love to hear how just a little bit more about that and how God used that to redeem your story. Would you mind diving in?
Well, so my mum kicked my dad out of the house when I was young, maybe 4 or 5. He drank a lot, gambled, and so not having a dad, I always wanted a dad growing up. So I remember running away from school, and sneaking out, climbing over the fence and running home from school because my mum was with a different man and I didn't want that, and I wanted to catch her. This was years after they had split up. And so and then my mum made it difficult for me to see my dad. I blame my mum, but now knowing as an adult what happened in that, I can totally understand why my mum did that. But that yearning to be seen or be known by a father was something that I didn't know cut so deep. And then the first time that I really had one of those incredible, as I say, miraculous encounters with God was at a youth event, which the church tricked us to go to this Christian concert because they were going to take us to Kentucky Fried Chicken, and then they said, Jasper, there's going to be girls there. So, food and girls, me and my friends would go anywhere. Okay, we'll go, even if it is, some silly Christian event, but we sat in the back row of that big hall in Belfast. We didn't want to be there. We were slapping people's heads and flicking their ears and pulling the girls' hair and kicking the seats. We just wanted to get kicked out. We were messers. We liked to have a laugh. We didn't want to be there. But then they started to worship. And I had been to church and in choirs and different things and seen all that, but I'd never been around, contemporary worship. And they started to sing to Jesus. I didn't know it was called worship, just sing to Jesus. But the presence of God came into the room in an incredible way. But my friends were still flicking people's ears. But for me, it was the presence of God was there. I wanted to fall on my knees and just I didn't know why I wanted to fall on my knees, but just in his presence, that felt like the right thing to do. I didn't fall on my knees, but I held onto the chair, but I couldn't stop the tears. And I just started to weep in his presence. And I say this often to young people and to others who've heard my testimony. It wasn't an audible voice. It was louder than that. And it was God saying, I see you. I see you, Jasper. And the tears weren't bad tears, they were good tears. And I just was in the presence of the Father, and I was seen by him. And and I didn't want my friends to see me crying and all that, and I made up an excuse around that. But and then I had other encounters of that, were rescue prayers as well. So we drank alcohol at a very young age in my estate, and then it led into drugs as well. And I remember one time I hadn't taken any drugs, but I think somebody spiked me with a drug of some kind, but I don't know if they had. But anyway, I remember being at home and hallucinating, and all these scary thoughts going through my head, really, really scary thoughts. I was seeing things in my room. All the hairs in my arms were growing. It was really, really scary. And I remember, because I knew my mum sent me to church, and my sister was a Christian. My brother became a Christian, which was really important because we didn't, he was the older brother, and he asked me to do things, and but you're not my dad, you can't tell me what to do. But but when he became a Christian, our relationship grew as well. So I knew all about God, and I had these encounters with God. I knew all what you had to do, and that night I got on my knees, and I prayed, the sinner's prayer. I prayed, I gave my life to Jesus. God, if you come and see, I give my life to you, come into my heart. I prayed all that, in terror of dying that night. And I wrote my mum a note saying, it's okay, mum, I didn't take drugs last night. But I became a Christian, it's okay. And I wrote her a note because I thought I was going to die, and I put it in my drawer of my, chest of drawers in my desk, so that when she was clearing out my stuff, she would see this note and have, some comfort. Um, and But honestly, I woke up the next day and I was fine, and as if I put God in the bottom drawer as well. I forgot all about God again and went away. And you do all these things, and um, I had other encounters of God where it was rescue prayers in our area in Northern Ireland. It was a loyalist area, all Protestants, and there was Catholics, and there was tension. Um, and we grew up in a divided community, in a divided town, and we went to separate schools and separate sports. And we used to drive. These older men would have let us drive the cars around the council estate, and we thought this was brilliant. At 14, 15, we got to drive Ford Escort XR3i was the car. It had a blue metallic spoiler. We thought we were cool. We got to drive around, but this was how they groomed us into the gangs. And then in the back of the car one time, they asked us, me and a friend, would we join this youth club? And, well, what do you do in this youth club? And you'd get to drive the cars, you hang around the shop, things we were already doing. And I wanted to drive the cars. I was like, yeah, I'll join. And then they said, well, there's a few rules. You can't talk to Catholics. You can't associate with Catholics. In fact, you have to hate Catholics. And there was one Catholic family in our estate, and he was my best friend. And they knew I didn't want anything to do with this. And it was part of so in Northern Ireland, there is the loyalist paramilitaries, gangsters who defend the union with the UK against the Irish Republican Army, the IRA. And so in our communities, there was this, Ulster Defence Association, which was a gang, and this was the youth wing of it that they were inviting me into. And that night, they initiated me by petrol bombing a prison officer's car. I just had to sit in the front seat, and they picked people up and dropped them off and did it. This was them sort of including me in it. But I remember going home that night. I was dying inside. This was not me. I didn't want any part of this. And I wasn't a Christian then. I was only maybe 14 or 15. But I remember, this is not right, but also this is not God. I had that thought. This is this Catholic and Protestant thing, it's nothing to do with faith. It's nothing to do with Jesus, because I had had these encounters of Jesus and he was good, and this was not good. And I remember going home, and my brother became a Christian, as I said. And I remember we shared a double bed because we would have a side each for all our clothes. And I didn't tell my friends that because that was embarrassing at the time. But I remember cuddling him that night as he was asleep, and praying that his God would be my God and take me away from this and protect me. And so I had those prayers, and I felt assurance from God that God was with me. I had these different prayers throughout my time of, um, God rescue me, save me. Oh, I know you're real. I'll become a Christian later. So then when I went to university in England, my mum gave me a Bible on my 18th birthday. I would read my Bible at night after being out drinking. I would read my Bible most nights, and I would go to church the odd time. And I actually had started to pray to meet some Christian guys at university, but then I got a Christian girl, and so God again working way up in advance here is my wife Lynn, and that was part of the story as well of just again God showing up. So a long story, but I had lots of other encounters, and so that lifestyle and not having a father, the drugs, alcohol, um, even the gangs in Ireland and that kind of paramilitary stuff. Again, if God can do it in me, he can meet young people wherever they're at. And that was, I just knew that's I could speak to those young people, and let them know that God sees them too.
Jasper, thanks for sharing just a bit of your own story. It's really good to be able to hear how God worked even through the chaos of your story. And I was just reminded as you were speaking of all the parents that I've spoken to who have children that their hearts are longing to know Jesus, and youth ministers or like pastors themselves or ministry organizations that are working with young people. What advice would you have to the parents or the leaders who have young people that have a story quite similar to yourself, that are just running from God, always saying maybe next year, maybe caught up in things that they shouldn't be caught up in? What advice do you have for those adults as they're trying to pray for and walk alongside troubled youth like that?
I would say keep going. Young people know whenever adults care, and even if they don't show it, and they're even antagonistic against it, leave me alone, go away, hang in there, because um, I say this often, those young people, especially around inner city, where there is things in the home that are difficult, that young people are praying to God. I didn't know great theology and techniques of prayer, but I shouted out to God, rescue prayers, help me, Lord. And young people are struggling with things and they don't know where to turn to. And we're seeing this at the moment, young people turning to God and asking him for help. So I would just encourage parents, especially, and church leaders, keep reaching out, keep showing love and care, and asking young people how they are. You think little things of showing interest, they make such a difference, because young people they're in their own head, they're in their own space, and if somebody can just, like, how are you doing? Thinking about you. Are you okay? Anything I can help with? They might just say, go away, don't be silly. But just showing up, being there for young people, um, is so important. And for church, especially, as largely our churches are middle class, and that is a big problem. So largely these young people from more working class inner city areas find it difficult because of behavior or because of attitudes to feel welcomed in church. So we need to have spaces and create places where young people who've never been in church before, or who that is not their culture or history or family history, where they can feel loved and cared for and included in events or in programs that is beyond the Sunday service. So creating spaces where the young people feel safe, where they can have fun, where they can be themselves, where adults care for them is so important.
Yeah, thanks for that, Jasper. I would love to chat to you about the state of Christian work and Christianity within Europe, and especially among young people. You spent 20 years now, plus minus, working with young people in these areas. Can you just give me the pulse of youth ministry and youth work among the next generation in Europe?
It's very exciting at the moment, and people would have heard about the Quiet Revival and other research. We were part of a big bit of research called the Open Generation with Barna. We did that around 20 nations. We surveyed over 25,000 young people in 20 different countries. I also did a bit of research with Barna in Ireland called Finding Faith in Ireland, and the and this is from young people who aren't Christians as well. There's an openness. That's why we called it the open generation. This generation are open to lots of things, um, open to curious about spirituality, curious about exploring an adventure. They're open. So whether that's can be positive and negative, because they can be open to very negative things too. But there is an openness that we are seeing in young people that is different to millennials or the generation before them. And so that as a starting baseline, that's good to know if you're a church leader or a youth minister. Okay, these young people, it's not that they have got a negative view of church, they've actually got an open view of faith and Jesus and church. And really, it is the encounter is important, that your story is important. So, whenever they're hearing stories of personal encounters of God, they aren't as skeptical as the generation before them. So that openness is really positive because it helps us think, okay, um, if we are seeing this across young people who aren't professing faith, that they're open, then we've got an opportunity to tell them the good news and let them be open to something good. And I think also, although social media is toxic and it is a very confusing platform for young people, and there's lots of negativity. There is also, if they're on those, if they're searching for things, they can find young people very easily talking and sharing about their faith very openly, and that is positive. So young people are curious. They search things up, they Google it, they chat GBT it, and they get lots of good information where they can form opinions and get good arguments. So that's at their fingertips. So that openness and that curiosity, it is a different sphere that we're in. And so the church needs to adapt to that and also be confident that our story is important, that our story matters, and that our story has depth. And young people are looking for something deeper. And so the story of Jesus is catching their imagination because, especially in Ireland, lots of, you know, we're a de-churched culture, and that's lots of Europe where we've been put off by scandals, by cover-ups, by people holding on to tradition and losing their children. But actually, there's an openness and a curiosity in young people. So I think that's across Europe. Obviously, we're post-Christian, um, young people don't have the same baggage as parents and grandparents around the church and being put off by the church. There's what we're saying with young people is that if they do encounter Jesus, they tell their friends about it very openly and easily. They don't try and hide it. It's like, yeah, I'm going to church. Do you want to come? That would have been much more um awkward for young people even 10 years ago. They would have been timid in their faith and hide it, but they're just, yeah, I'm going to church. It's great. I'm meeting loads of people. We're going on trips. We're doing that. There's an openness to talk about it, which is just, I think, really encouraging. So, mixed in with that, I think God is making it easy at the moment. I think put young people in a room, God is showing up in powerful ways. It's not that we're getting clever with our youth ministry. We're not even being we're just gathering young people, and there's an openness, and the spirit is moving. So take the opportunity at the moment, because it seems that God has a bias for young people, and I love that. But in scriptures, I see his bias for children and young people all the time. So I just think the church needs to have confidence that we're in a moment where it's yes for young people, where it's we need to have eyes for young people and not be embarrassed to invite them and include them in church and ministry and the fringes of church and ministry.
Yeah, Jasper, as you're speaking about this openness and this curiosity, I was just I was reminded of a young youth leader in my own church who came to Christ on YouTube. She was curious about witchcraft and was researching things on witchcraft and came across a video about Christianity, and so that curiosity led her into dark places, but it also led her into the light. And now she's a leader in our church, and she's really thriving in her faith. And so I would love to give you an opportunity to speak to those church leaders, those ministry leaders who are listening to this, and talk to us about how we can really take hold of that opportunity of the curiosity. So imagine you're in a room full of youth pastors. What advice would you have for them in terms of that openness?
Well, I think for church leaders, especially if I don't think church leaders don't want to reach young people, or don't want to invest in young people. I think in the past they might have been a little bit afraid to get it wrong, or not to have a go. I would encourage, whether it's churches starting from the first time or trying to think, how do we reach our community, that gap between nothing to something is always the most difficult. If you've got no young people in your church, oh, where do we start? Or there used to be young people, there's not anymore. What have we did wrong? Whatever sort of phase you're in your church or your ministry, the hardest thing is always that gap from nothing to something. So I think church leaders, and sometimes even youth workers, think they have to have 40 and 50 young people coming to church on a Sunday. That's what successful youth ministry is. I think we need to really sort of squash that idea, because young people, open your church door, they're not just going to flock in. We're at a different phase. We have to go to where young people are. We have to build relationships and be intentional about building relationships, letting young people know the church cares, and we're going to do things for you that aren't even about you coming to church on a Sunday, because we care for you. We're going to do things that you enjoy and that we can help you with, and then lead, obviously, to faith conversations and hopefully to following Jesus. But I would say to church leaders, um, don't be thinking you have to have 20 or 30 young people. Start with what you've got. If you've 2 or 3 young people, offer them something. And whether that's just, okay, we're going to meet in our house on a Friday night, the two of you, to build relationships. Relationships is still the key. It always is with youth ministry, relational youth ministry. Start with who you've got right in front of you, whether that's just 2 or 3 people, and offer them something where you can build relationships with them. And then out of that, see what God does. But I think people don't start because they think they have to have 10 or 20 to start, or and so I just encourage people, um um start with what you've got. The danger is that you're looking at other churches or other ministries and thinking, we're never going to get to that. But wow, imagine doing something for 3 or 4 young people where they grow in their relationship with God, because that's what you've got, and then see what God does with that. Because again, if those young people are not afraid to share their faith, or to share that, oh, Friday night we go here, do you want to come? The young people will invite their friends, and that peer evangelism is really key now, because I think us or church leaders getting into schools inviting them, that will not have as much credibility as a young person saying, yeah, I go to this on a Friday night, do you want to come? And that's having confidence that young people will share, is actually takes the weight off some of the leaders as well. So my message is always, have a go. If it doesn't work, you tried. You know what? If the young people don't want to come, they'll tell you they don't want to come. But if you don't ask them, you will never know. We need to ask young people here, what would you like to do? Is there something we can do on a Friday or Saturday or after school? What works for them? What would they like? Ask them a few questions, get them involved with the process, and then trust God to be God and show up.
Jasper, what you're talking about here is really a philosophical shift in youth ministry, because I mean, you mentioned, you can't just open the doors anymore and expect people to flock in. But from what I'm seeing, at least in my context, is that is the approach that most churches have. Is we want people to come to our church, so we're going to set aside a night, and we're going to invite the young people to come, and we're going to wait for them to come in to meet with us. And you mentioned the strategy of saying, well, let's begin with relationships. Let's build relationships, even if that means that it's not going to like add to the attendance. And so this is like a metrics, kind of how do you determine success in youth ministry and in ministry? You're offering a very different philosophy to what we are used to in our churches, especially the evangelical type churches. Can you speak into that for a moment? Because I think it's really important for us to dig in here.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, that question, what is church? Is church 1 hour on a Sunday? Is that what we're building? Are we building a service, or are we building a discipleship program for young people to form faith and faith formation over a course of time? Because many of our churches, and it is just the reality, a young person coming in and sitting in a 30-minute sermon and songs that they don't know just isn't comfortable for them. And that isn't that can't be the starting point, because that turns off so many young people. It also turns off so many adults. So expecting adults to walk in to a Sunday, especially in a traditional church where maybe there's been um, historical baggage, expecting them just to turn up on a Sunday is a big ask as well. So how do our churches make the building more approachable, make it more comfortable, make it more welcoming? So running events or running programs in the church that aren't just the Sunday service, where people feel comfortable coming in. So for us, in the first church that I explained at the start in East Belfast, we would do schools out programs where we would clear the church. We would gunge their teachers, like get young people to gunge their teachers and have fun in the church building, even though the carpets might get dirty. And but using the sanctuary space as a place that they felt comfortable, they could have fun in. So then eventually when they did come to church, oh, I've been here before. I know this space. I know this place. And I've been involved in things. So it's not just young people. It's how do we make our churches a place of welcome for all ages is a really important question. In youth ministry, um, we need many touch points. So if you're trying to reach young people who've never been in church, so a big place for us was to develop schools ministry, to go into the schools, to try and build relationships, to see the young people. They're there at school every day, so we actually offered the schools around the area, could we help them do lunchtime, like duty, help them. So we would play football at lunchtime. We would help get the kids in and out of class again. So they see us on the streets, they see us in their schools. And then we have programs in our church buildings, after schools and evenings, youth clubs, drop ins, again, relational touch points, so that you're maybe seeing young people 2, 3, 4 times a week. Now, to get them to come to a Sunday service, we had to change our whole Sunday service to make it appropriate to young people. Plus, we got our young people involved. We got them um, doing music, welcoming people, um, doing funny games, just getting them involved so they felt a part of it. That all those little steps helped them feel, oh, this church isn't just me coming and sitting. I can be involved. I can be included, but then also adults caring for them and loving them, and that knowing their names, saying you're so welcome, all that makes a difference. But that takes years of work. And but the big question, and this is why we're excited about what God's doing with young people at the moment. But if our churches are not prepared to welcome them and accept them, we're going to miss a huge opportunity. So my my big question to church leaders is, do you do you really think there's going to be 30 young people sitting in your Sunday morning service? Is that your goal? Or is your goal to help these young people encounter Jesus and walk with them and have services that are appropriate for them.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that challenge. I would love to give you an opportunity just to dive a little bit deeper into that. I mean, how do churches change that paradigm of just trying to get people to fill seats, but then trying to rather get them to see Jesus and encounter Jesus? How do you encourage churches within your own sphere of influence to do that?
It is a shift from the congregation as well as the church leaders. So I was very fortunate in that church in inner city Belfast, Willowfield Parish Church. They surveyed the whole community and they knew young people, and they had a heart to reach young people, but they knew young people weren't going to come in because it was a Church of Ireland. It was traditional, come book of prayer, it was liturgical, there was organs. That young people don't listen to an organ music in their car or on the radio, so it's not, but they were prepared to even stop their service to do something that young people can come to. So there is, and the minister, the church leader walked them through that. They still have their church services are that they love, that they meet God in, but they knew that that wasn't appropriate for young people. So they were willing to sacrifice the time of their service to create an evening service for young people that would be noisy and loud and fun games that they weren't interested in, but they were prepared um, to let that be for the young people in the area. So there is an openness that we need in our not just from the church leader, but from the faithful people in our churches to say, do you know what? Um, the loud music and the funds and the games, that isn't for me, but I recognize that we need to do that to make young people feel comfortable and allow space for that. However that fits in on a Sunday or a Saturday night or a midweek service, that's depends on. But I think church leaders need to take the congregations on a journey. If we want to see young people in our churches, how do we do that? How do we make it appropriate? What can we let go of to enable young people to feel comfortable? I think that's a good starting point and a conversation. And there are so many incredible, faithful Christians who love and long to see young people engaged, and they're ready to move things, but maybe haven't been involved in the conversation, and maybe church leaders feel they can't change things because that has been, serving those people for all these generations, or they don't want to upset people. But I think having conversations, they'll be surprised, and and that intentional outward focus. How do we invest in the next generation? We're not asking those people to go and do detached youth work or to go to the schools, but we are asking them to pray and support it and give towards investing in the next generation. And I think that's so many people will do that, and so many older people will do that. I had lots of older people. I gave them names to pray for these young people, and I faithfully prayed for them, and they were so excited to see them engage with God. They didn't want to come to the services. They didn't want to be. They weren't on the streets, but they prayed for the young people, and they were so encouraged to see their church being open for young people. Um, and I think that is the heart of many of our churches. But I think we need courage from our church leaders to really focus on that. And that's not easy whenever um, there isn't any young people in the church, or the church is declining and we try to hold on to what we've got. Um, and if we open that up, will we even lose what we've got? That's they're difficult conversations, but it is the crucial conversations that lots of our churches need to have. And that openness, I think God honors that. We have known the blessing of this church and the relationships here, and we are prepared to let down our thing so that something else can spring up for these young people. And passing on faith to the next generation is our call as a church. If we're not doing that, if we're not seeing that, well, then we need to think, well, how can we change, and what can we do? Or is it other churches that we can partner with? Those are really important questions, because the reality is, for the last couple of decades, that hasn't been the focus, and we're seeing the consequences.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. The open at the top of this interview, you mentioned that this is the open generation, and in order for us to reach the open generation, we ourselves need to be open, and we need to be curious. And what I was picking up from you is through our own openness and our own curiosity about them and how we can help them find faith, that opens the door for them to enter in and to experience Christ in a unique way. For a moment, just as before we wrap up this interview, we've spoken a lot about reaching the next generation and engaging with them. But another huge challenge that I see within churches and ministries is once you've reached them, there's that challenge of and that invitation to discipleship. So how do we go beyond just getting butts and seats to actually gathering people and discipling them, helping them encounter Christ and grow in Christ likeness? What advice would you have to church leaders or ministry leaders who are trying to, as best as they can, lead people into that process of becoming more like Jesus?
Yeah, well, and I think if the vision is discipleship rather than bums on seat in the church, I think that's a really good place to start. So how do we help form faith for the long haul in a young person's life? What are the things we're putting in to help them learn how to follow Jesus? So we've got the encounter of Jesus, and that's amazing. But that lifelong discipleship, how do we do that as a church? And that's again the same for adults. It's not just having a 1 hour Sunday faith. What's it mean to follow Jesus? Walk with him closely, walk with others who walk with him, and also do the things that Jesus did. So for young people, again, this is our whole focus is investing in people to invest in young people. So whether it's employing a youth pastor or a youth minister, or whether it's investing in volunteers, that is key. Lots of our research shows that if a young person has a significant other who asks them about their faith journey, they have a legacy of following Jesus. And what I mean by that, we use language around mentors and spiritual guides, but even just somebody who's interested in their faith and asks them, that's so important for young people. In Ireland, mums came out on top. It was mums who encouraged young people in their faith journey. So all you mums out there and dads, just being interested in your kids' faith journey and asking them about it is really important. But having other adults that do that in their life is so key. Um, so we do need to help young people engage with discipleship. So having intentional programs where obviously they're encountering Jesus, there's opportunities to engage with God, whether that's in youth events or residentials or taking young people away, but then trying to teach and coach them how to read scripture, how to pray, how to put things in their life that are practical and explore and be adventurous with that it's not you have to do this, 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 and this. Letting young people have a go and then asking them, well, how did that work? How did that feel? Getting them in small groups to do it together is key. That peer on peer, where they learn together, where they ask each other's questions, where they're building trust, where they can have questions that they're not embarrassed to ask, and you don't have to give them all the answers. But key for a young person is getting them to serve as well, getting them involved, so that it's not just teaching, teaching, teaching. It's okay, you can be a leader, getting them alongside the leaders, helping them prepare games, getting them involved in services. Young people want to be involved. They don't want to just be passive. So how do we activate and mobilize them serving or having fun, or even, okay, you're going to prepare this and you're going to get all the games and you can do it. Just involving them in little ways makes a huge difference. So discipleship is that intentional, how do they follow God? How do they walk with God? But then also, how do they do things that Jesus did? And that journey keeps them involved. Um, but that's not easy. There's not a, here's 6 things you need to do. Because whenever I was youth pastor, I looked at other oh, they've got a really successful youth ministry. My young people are crazy. They're never going to be like that. And but I had to realize, wow, my young people are incredible, and they're coming. They're not going to be like this nice sorted church down the road, but I can walk with these young people and they can encounter Jesus, and we can have these incredible journeys together and build on their faith and expose them to new things and allow them to ask questions. But I'm a disciple. I'm still learning. I am a disciple of Jesus Christ, and I still am learning so much about him. And I think if we have that posture of with these young people learning together, involving them in our lives, it's not just it's not just the programs. I'm very open with young people, and and our leaders. We're investing our lives in them. It's not just an education authority program where we're doing A, B, and C. We're loving them. We're involving their sports, in their schools, in their life, and if they know that we care for them, um, youth ministry doesn't have to be sexy and really creative. It can be very simple, and young people aren't looking for glitzy and flashy. They're looking for authentic relationships. And I think that this is the beauty of our church. It's who we are. It's what we're about. If we can offer love and care and authentic relationships, young people, that's what that without them knowing it, that's what they're craving. And the church, that's who we are. And when church is done well, when there's that intergenerational passing on of faith, it is a beautiful thing, and it captures young people's hearts. They might not be able to pinpoint it. Why am I coming back here? I don't know, but that person knows my name. They know that they care, and so they turn up. And I think we have to have confidence in our church that if we love God and love Jesus and want to pass him on to others, it's it is good news. And so by doing simple things well, we have something to offer, and it's not rocket science, but it is beautiful, and it is the Church of Jesus Christ. And so take confidence. If we invest in young people with love and care, it pays dividends, and we're prepared to walk with them. So we volunteers who walk with young people, who journey with them, small groups, praying for them, um, you know, being interested in their sports and their life, things that make a huge difference.
Jasper, this has been such a rich time. It's been so great to be able to hear your story, hear your insights, and even to be challenged by some of the things that you have said over the course of this interview. I'm sure that there are going to be people who are going to want to connect with you online. So, how can people connect with you? How can people find out more about your ministry? Or perhaps even resources, if you have resources that you can point people to.
Yeah. So, well, ciy.eu is our website, Christ in Youth, ciy.eu. On there is a resources page where actually they can see that open generation research. They can see the Finding Faith in Ireland research. I audited sort of all of Ireland to look how many youth pastors and youth workers there are in the church in every denomination. Again, just showing how little there is. There's that research on there, but you can find out what we do on that website. Um, for me personally, I'm very happy to give out my email, and people can email me. I'm not really on social media, so you will find me maybe, but you'll never get an answer from me because I'm not on it that much. And that's a purposeful thing. I just don't really engage with it that much. But my email is jasper.rutherford@ciy.com. And very happy to get information. I like encouraging people and helping people. So don't be afraid to reach out, ask me any questions. If I can point you to other people or point you to other things, I will do that. But very happy for anybody to reach out. And if you've questions specifically about how to reach young people or how can the church really build a youth ministry, very happy to talk about those kind of things.
Wonderful. I'm going to put that into the show notes for those who are driving or doing something else. You'll be able to get hold of that information in the show notes. Jasper, as we begin to wrap up, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to leave with us?
I would just love to, if you're listening to this, I would just really implore you to, if you're on the fence of, oh, I don't know how to reach young people. I still feel like that sometimes, even though I've been doing youth ministry. But what I've found is young people are not as scary as you think, and young people are so curious at the moment, and so try something, whether it's food or whether it's fun, um, but have a go and try something in your church. Get other leaders or other adults and say, what would it look like for us to do something for young people in our community, um, and have that attitude that it doesn't mean they have to come to our church, because um, this is the beauty of our church. If we care for young people out there and they go to a different church, or they encounter God in different, if your church cares for young people and wants to see the best for young people, God will, by his Holy Spirit, just multiply and grow that. I have every confidence that he will use you in that, whether it's to help another church or another community. But if your church really does want to do something, it probably starts with you having the conversation with other people in your church to say, will we have a go? So have a go. Have a go is what I would always say to anybody.
Wonderful. Could I ask that you just take a moment to pray, Jasper, for those who, I mean, if they're listening up until this point, they must have a heart for young people. And so I'd love just to give you an opportunity just to pray over every leader that and parent who just wants to see the next generation come to know Christ.
Yeah, Father God, thank you that you continue to pursue us, young and old. God, you have a heart and a love for young people greater than any of us, and you long to see people come to you. So Lord, I just pray for a sense of confidence across your church, rekindle and reflame and retool us to trust you that God, you are working way in advance of us. We thank you for the stories we're hearing of young people dreaming about you, Jesus, and showing up at churches. We thank you for the stories we're hearing of young people randomly, yeah, watching YouTube videos or just curious about you and showing up at churches. So Lord, thank you that you continue to pursue and speak words of truth and knowledge and grace and generosity. So Lord, I pray for all of us who long to see young people come to you. Lord, give us confidence and trust that you are able, and that your church is good, that the gospel of Jesus Christ is good news for our young people today. So Lord, give us just the wherewithal and the tenacity, Lord, to try things, to have a go, whether it's simply offering a space for young people to meet, or and putting on food or something after school. Lord, help our churches do simple things that show that your church, your people care for young people. Lord, I pray, Holy Spirit, come and continue to stir our hearts to reach young people. Lord, thank you that there is this curiosity in young people, but also thank you, Lord, that there are so many leaders and adults also have a curiosity to help. So if people are on that fence of, oh, how do I get involved, Lord, I just pray for courage and a sense of taking that step of being involved, even stumbling into it the way I did, helping out and showing up and being available for young people. Lord, may your church, may adults in your church be available for young people, even if it's just opening up doors or serving food. Help us and give what we can. And Lord, I pray for your church. I pray for an investment in youth ministry. I pray for leaders of denominations and bishops and clergy and people who have power and seats to release funds like they have never released before, to invest in people, to invest in young people. I pray for a huge swell of investment into youth ministry across our church, an urgency to invest in people, to invest in young people, and help your church see the need, but also to see the opportunity that we have in front of us at the minute, right across Europe, for your church to go after young people. So help us, Lord. We need your help. Give us courage and strength, and help us work together across our churches and our denominations and to reach young people in the name of Jesus. I pray this in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.